Today is going to be part two of my first bunch of Baltimore photos from 2003 when I first moved into the city for graduate school. A lot of them were taken on the Baltimore Beltline, north around between Charles and St. Paul Street, where that retaining wall collapsed back in 2014. Let's probably find that video. It's probably not too hard to find here. Let's see. I'm just gonna throw it in the chat real quick for here it is, for anyone who's never seen it. Don't need to really play it.
Why is it so bad?
Turn that off, but I'm just going to throw this in the chat real quick for anyone who wants to see. Amtrak's baggage thing sort of goes back and forth. They used to do it at the end, and then they moved it to the front, and then they moved it back to the end a bunch of years ago. Almost probably like 3 or 4. I don't know what it exactly is. For some of the trains, it has to do with they cut off. They pull off a number. So some of the NEC trains are also like the Palmetto specifically, and also the Carolinian. The baggage is on the back of those because when they pull off the electric, they take a couple coaches with it, or they want that option. If the baggage was in the head end, they wouldn't be able to take off coaches because they run those as NEC trains that go to North Carolina, to go south. So when they go south, they'll pull off a couple coaches. The long distance, I don't know. It's just sort of, I'm sure it was someone's initiative. Every time a manager comes in, they got to change things or else they're not doing their job. I'm sure that someone could say, well, if the train gets rear-ended, something. Although if you put sometimes the people sleeper, they'll say, oh, it's quieter back there. But at the same point, the ride is worse. So anyway, I should probably start getting going here before I go on. I'm got a full slate today. Yesterday we left off at so early when I was there, I took a little walk around. Checked out the North Avenue area. This was the light rail, Baltimore Beltline, and Amtrak Northeast Corridor all pass under the Route 1 bridge, which is, if I have this up there, so there's your Route 1 bridge, or I think it's one of the Route 1s, and there's your Baltimore Beltline, there's your Amtrak Northeast Corridor, and there's your Baltimore light rail, and they all sort of pass the same pace. And it was all walking distance from my house. One of those things, those places that when you was so close by, I never went there. But part of it is just because all you'd get are sort of overhead shots of stuff going below you, and overhead shots of locomotives aren't usually the best. But anyway, here we just see some of the third rail, or the overhead wire feeds for the Baltimore light rail. It's a 750 volt system, I'm pretty sure, or 600 to 750 volts, which means a lot of current for these guys. Was it Mount Royal? It's North Ave int. Oh God. I'm just gonna rename some files here that I got wrong. I heard some folks saying that it probably would have been better for them to do the 1500 volts. But I'm sure it was less costly in the long run. But you need all those little feeder S wires there just due to the voltage. I mean the amperage going through that. The amp load on third rail or 750 volt DC systems can be, especially on those dual modes that you see coming out of places. You have many thousands of amps to get the power that you need for a locomotive, which is why those dual modes never seem to work right. It's like when you need equipment that can handle 10,000 amps, even if the voltage is low, that's why they can never seem to get it right. So here we have, like I mentioned at the yesterday's video, one of the interesting things at the Baltimore light rails that they made use of some PR style position lights for what I like to call their restricted speed interlockings. Like a lot of light rails, it has both street sections and railroad sections. The railroad sections have one set of signals, but they wanted to differentiate them in their street zones. The street zone stretching from North Ave all the way down to Camden Yards, and then there's another small section at both Hunt Valley and Glen Burnie. So when you're on the street mode, they just wanted some signal. You know, the trains are basically running on site, so they just wanted to have something that's sort of like a, you know, switch. It's a little bit like a switch position indicator, but it probably gives absolute indications. But it's nice to have, you know, a use for PR position light dwarfs. This is a safe train model. Here we have the mini high platform, which here is just because the station is at below parking lot grade. It's just a ramp. Can't all be exciting, but I got some exciting stuff coming up. You'll see. Here I am just trying to highlight the again the little position light guy. Gonna break out some of my magic wand there to brighten that up. Oh shoot, I'm over sharpening these. There we go. Just not a ton of interesting stuff right here, but it'll get interesting in a second. Just brightening that up. I used to do this a lot more often, but you would generally for brightening, I like to go with sort of a context aware. They have stuff that say brighten the stuff that are shadows as opposed to brighten everything. Every so often, if that shadow method isn't working, I got to break out the old little magic wand, and I set that to a brightness tolerance of 30, 40, or 50, and you just throw that right in the dark zone, and it should highlight everything you want to brighten up. It might miss a little bit here or there. If I really cared, if I was really trying to fake stuff up to pass inspection, I'd care more, but I don't. So, but just remember that you have that option. If you have something with some catastrophic dark spots. One thing that even this old 3 megapixel digital camera has, there's one of those things where with film you always had a lot of hidden resolution. That's why it's like, making it bigger. It's all the resolution you have. Making it bigger doesn't make it any sharper. But there is one thing that digital always hides: is darkness. You can always lighten it to get out a lot of times you can lighten it to get out the detail. Whereas the pixels have slight differentiation in color, you would just see black. So that's the one case where some of the digital tools can help. I wonder if that center track actually has I'm trying to think. I maybe not all platforms have all mini highs. Yeah, I don't think on the light rail they have mini highs on both ends of every track. So the center track would have a mini high on both ends, but not the edge ones. So notice here that middle track does not have. It has a punch box, but doesn't have a signal. So like I said, the operators sort of, man, they do something. Looks like the punch box is actually past the fouling point. Wonder how I work that one. Okay, whatever. I've always found light rail photos to be the most tedious ones to do. I don't know, there's just something about light rail systems. They're complicated like transit, so I don't have a lot of their details, but they're just dull. They're built like an elevator. San Diego's is nice, though. And Baltimore's had nice parts, but it's been thoroughly rebuilt with cab signals and just a lot of double track stuff, so it's mostly like any other transit line. I actually got a really interesting tour of the light rail maintenance facility a couple years ago. Okay, here we go. Here's something interesting. And so there's actually something that's very interesting. So I'm going to have to pull up my blockstation.net alternative here. Once I get this reset by name. I didn't think I'd need Amtrak diagrams today, but I do. I think it's this one. Here we go. So here we have at the end of Charles Interlocking. Now this used to be part of Union Junction, BNP Junction. Baltimore, one of them is Union Junction, one of them is BNP Junction. I can never tell which one. I think this is, well, hold on. This will tell us. I think it's BNP Junction. Yep. So Baltimore Station back in the glory years was controlled by two separate yet equal towers, separate yet equally important towers. Union Junction was at the far end of the north end of the line or the station, and BNP Junction was on the south. Union Junction controlling the Y track that would go downtown to Calvert Street Station. BNP Junction, the junction between North Central and the Baltimore and Potomac. All of these were slow-speed junctions. That means a lot of, that because it was cheaper, a lot of diamonds, everything moving at 15 miles an hour. BNP Junction in particular, if we go back to our Amtrak diagram, had control of the entire Baltimore and Potomac tunnels. Up to, at a certain point, I believe, including Fulton, what is now Fulton Interlocking, although there was a Fulton Tower, but I think at some point that got taken over by, at least it had control up to there. Now, one of the things that was important for that control was the use of gauntlet tracks for the BNP tunnels. BNP tunnels, cramped two-track tunnels, and to increase, for freight traffic, they put gauntlet tracks, and that means there was a separate set of rails that would shift the freight train over enough to be under the sort of dome of the tunnel. As freight traffic evaporated from the NEC. These were eventually removed, but as of 2003, you could still see, and I'll get into this more, they still had the gauntlet. The gauntlet tracks are out of service, but still there. Because you notice how many rails there are? Not that one. That's new rail. One, shiny, rusty, and those ones that shift over to the left are the old B&P tunnel gauntlet tracks. And they had, and this is why to this day here we have the entrances to what is now Charles Interlocking. It used to be the main body of B&P Junction. Going to the diagram, that's your 6SA and 7SB signals. No, sorry, wrong ones. Those are your 2N and 3N signals. But also you had these strange, back to the pictures, you had these strange exit signals. And the exit signals had to do with shutting down, basically when gauntlet track was in operation, you needed an extra set of absolute signals to basically halt traffic at the mouth of the tunnel so whatever freight train could run through and take up both tracks in one direction. So here we have the signal gantry for Charles, but it also has these two legacy exit signals, and you can still, in 2003, you still can see the remains of the gauntlet track. And that's something, again, because I had to chop down these pictures so much back in the day, I completely just sort of spaced on. And I was rarely ever down here to take pictures. I lived in this thing for 13 years, and I only ever walked across this bridge maybe 3 or 4 times, and only took pictures on this bridge like twice. And to this day, I got pictures somewhat recently, so I got what should be good pictures, but I probably should go back and do some cleanup there. But it's just one of those things that you're there so often that you just forget to do it. It's sort of a pain to walk down there, and you don't really want to bother with it. 7SB and 6SA. Probably don't really need to spell out what all the signals are there. In fact, I really don't. That goes against my whatever. But I get some news. Another neat thing at Charles, you have a supplementary substation still in use for signal power. Baltimore has where is it? Has a substation, but it's kind of cramped in there because the 138V, the kV feeders are underground, and they only come up briefly for some switch gear and tapping. So here is your circuit, your 11 kV switch gear and circuit breakers, and they just sort of put the signal power equipment up near where the old relay compressor house used to be. So I'm just going to write this a bit, get it looking vertical. At least as of 2003, you can see some clearly original 1930 equipment in there. And that's all for the 100 hertz. This whole thing is for the 100 hertz signal power. And here we can see, well, there's the new relay house. And right there is where the gauntlet tracks have been cut. Right at the signal. So Don't know exactly when that happened. This was the first time so it was clearly before I got there. There was another gauntlet track at the New Carrollton station that also got cut while I was around 2005, but these had been out of service for some time. And this is just sort of, we have some catenary anchors for however they're doing the tunnel there. And here we have the entrance to the B&P tunnel, directly as seen from the Route 1 bridge, which would be right somewhere. Here we go. Yep, you can see it's seen right. I'm standing. If you can't really see it here, but that Route 1 bridge, they have like a sidewalk and then sort of an elevated like sidewalk next to the sidewalk, and you can stand on that and take whatever pictures you want down onto the Amtrak. Usually I would treat something like the B&P tunnel like infrastructure, but it's so close to Charles Interlocking, I'm just going to lump it in there because I don't really feel like figuring out what the how to do the miles. And notice there's your normal track bed. That's track 3, and here on track 2 the ties are extended for the gauntlet track that is no longer there. So I think that at some point they have gone through and redone the track bedding in there. So that's probably all been ripped out, but at least I got it there. So yeah, that was a pretty neat rediscovery there of the gauntlet track hardware. All right, let's see if anybody any questions. Baltimore, as far as I can tell, the Baltimore Light Rail does not do any freight. They used to have a pretty good, from what I've been told by people who are knowledgeable, the Baltimore Light Rail, because it was a very early light rail system, I think only second behind San Diego, had a very good FRA operating waiver or agreement that they could effectively run freight anytime they wanted. They might have needed to do absolute block. But from there used to be two major customers. There was two on the north side and like one or two on the south side. The south side freight folded first. North side freight was mainly coming out of this giant quarry up near Hunt Valley. The quarry is still there, but they stopped shipping out rail. And they also had business at a vinegar distillery, and that also at some point lost service. So both those customers stopped getting rail shipments, and then in theory they could still do it, but I'm not sure about what the from what I heard, they often would run the trains overnight, but they could bring them down during the day. Baltimore light rail service was pretty bad, so there was ample time to do that in the single track era. I don't know what this is. It's just a little MOW house, some sort of hut or house. Unfortunately, it has now caught fire. So if you see it from the side of the train, it's the walls are there, but the roof is largely charred. I don't know why they haven't demolished it. Probably because it's Amtrak and they actually take registered historic places seriously. I don't know what that is, though. It's exactly the same style of architecture as the tower. It's not a tower. It's just like a freight house or a yard office or something. Continuing on. Oh, that's really interesting. So this bridge here with the arch. I've always noted most people it's a Howard Street Bridge, but a lot of people call it the Rainbow Bridge because it's painted in a yellow. I mean, you can sort of see it. I have to keep going back to this map here, the overhead. You can kind of see it. They painted it's a green and a yellow and a red, sort of rainbow scheme. But it looks like here it's just getting its paint job done for either the first time. Maybe it was, maybe it's just getting a refresher, but that's interesting. And not much else there. Just the same gantry. And there's Baltimore Penn Station all the way there in the background, right there. Again, same type of architecture as you saw with the towers and that little hut building, whatever that is. Oh, here we have here we have the actual the new Charles interlocking right there. Or it's not the new Charles, it's just Charles interlocking. It used to be B&P Junction. Amtrak does have a thing for naming its interlockings after streets. Sometimes they don't, but it's pretty common. I'm gonna cut a little bit. So also note at this point, Charles is an electric interlocking, but even to this day, you can still see the air plant. And I'm not sure I have a picture of the compressor house, but there's the airline passing right in front and heading down the way. Also, this concrete tube there, that's where they have the oil-filled high tension lines for the 138 kV feeders. Now it's plus 69 kV and minus 69 kV. Split phase, but that's something that they had to fix during my tenure in the city, which was a pretty big thing. Because I had to take one circuit out, which put a lot of capacity. Which put, if both of them had failed, that would have been bad. They do have a converter plant south of Baltimore, but it would have been not the greatest thing in the world. But they got it fixed and redid the high voltage lines through the city. I mean, through the Baltimore terminal. All right, here we are back to where I take a lot of those photos. But for those of you who missed the other day's video, between Charles and St. Paul, that's the Charles Street Tunnel. Behind it is the St. Paul Street Tunnel. Late afternoon. Again, I'm going to go through that quick story of I would stay at the apartment. For a while, I would have a scanner on. I would hear either a signal call for northbound trains or a detector for southbound trains. I'd have a minute to run out, go down half a block, jump on the wall, take the pictures. If the trains were, because of the grade, the trains going north or east were significantly slower than the ones coming west. I think this is an AC 6000, which were a lot of them running around back then. Yeah. This would have just been about 3 or 4 years old at the time. Or this 5010. These were done after the 600 to 699. The extra 16 were 5000 to 5016, or 17 or whatever it is. So I even back then I wasn't a huge fan of GEs, so it was just, oh, it's a GE. But now it's like, wow, I was really catching a lot of AC 6000s back then. Not sure what the bugaboo with those were. Probably reliability. One issue you have if you have an unreliable mega power unit is that if it dies, then often your train is stuck. Because if you're using it to its capacity, you're using it to haul extra stuff. But if it dies, then usually whatever it's paired with won't have enough power to even make the train move a little bit. Here we have a very, very smoky. That's another thing of these tunnels. When these trains were coming up on Notch 8, this maybe had a bad turbo, who knows. They were usually putting out a lot of smoke. So when they came out of these tunnels, this smoke would just pour out of them. And it would just sit there with smoke coming out of them for minutes. Sometimes the train would go on and smoke would still be wafting out of the tunnel. Here we have one of the Conrail SD60, either M's or I's. SD60i. I just stands for isolated cab. As much as I love Conrail, I do think that they were kind of had an eye towards GE. Here we have the rear angle of the same one. As like I said yesterday, one of the reasons I tired on running out and taking all these pictures all the time was, A, I did it a lot. I sort of burn out on it. But B, it gave you nice views, but it didn't give you great views. You'd have stuff in Dutch angles. It was just hard to frame it, and they never quite looked good. So even though, and of course, when you're younger, you think, oh, hey, this Conrail paint's going to be around for some time. So here we have 70, 35, 74. Right behind some returning New York City trash cans train units. CSX 70, 35, 74. Your car, you have 10 minutes to move your car. You have 5 minutes. Your car has been impounded. Your car has been crushed into a cube. You have 30 minutes to move your cube. A lot of these CSX SD70i. Here we have 8738. Let's see if that's an I or not. An I or an M. Also an I. So this is a pretty lucky day. Looks like the same sun. So again, I don't know if this was the same day. I didn't usually set the date of my camera back then, because it would get reset like if the batteries got changed out. 8738. Come on. That's weird. Run it off. Amtrak uses those tracks for maintenance of way, but there used to be a transloading facility down there that NS because the NS would have to bring their trains through Baltimore Penn Station and out there, they moved the transloading facility. So they're used by Amtrak MOW, but not really any freight, unless there might be occasional special moves or something if they have to bring something into the city, but I'm not entirely sure. Here we have another backlit example of the CPL dwarf of Huntington Ave. I eventually got better photos of this when I had more zoom capability. But that was all. And then I went through a phase of getting night shots with that, which was nice. A train would come out of the tunnel at night. You could do a timed exposure. It would light up like an annular ring around the tunnel portal. Really cool effects. And I'm gonna cut this one a little closer, simply because I have so many pictures of this signal at approach medium. I only ever saw this dwarf. Now this dwarf had orbitals. It had orbitals 12, 6, 10, and 8. And I only ever, because it's a one block siding, and I only ever saw this signal displaying medium approach medium once. And it was right. It was the year before it was decommissioned. And so, but I caught every, over the course of the 10 years that I had access to, I was passing by, I got every indication that could just be displayed. I put a thing in my blog. I don't mean just saw it. I mean, I got pictures of every aspect that could be displayed. Rarest, I think, probably were restricting. Medium approach. I think I saw medium approach on more than one occasion. Approach was also pretty rare, because once a train passed, there would have to be something in the block. But every so often, because the trains would stop, you'd get approach medium very often, because they'd often have something going on at HP Tower, which was 2 short blocks away. So you'd have approach medium to a stop, but rarely would you ever have a train with an approach at Mount Royal, like a stop at Mount Royal. But I think I saw 2 trains following close. They brought some light engines in behind, and I got it briefly when it went to approach. Probably because the signal, like the logic might have been changing. But I got every one on them, including a stop and proceed. I think I got stop and proceed wasn't that uncommon. Here we have 637, which is another AC 6000. I mean, yesterday I had 2 photos of AC 6000s, and here I have 2 photos of different AC 6000s. So it's just crazy how many we're running on this route, wherever it was going. Doesn't seem to be it wasn't seeing coal trains or anything like that. 637. I'm sure the crew appreciated blasting out into the bright sunlight there, but it'd be over soon. Yeah, it's just interesting in the world where you didn't quite have the easy access to rosters that you do now. I also don't think that out of a matter of course, I don't think that I would, when I would post them on my blog and such, I don't think that I ever would really find out and say, well, here's what it is. I would just be like, here's the number. I didn't really care what it was. Nice, nice view there. I remember if you want to know how you tell, they have a bigger radiator overhang and double exhausts. You can sort of see the double exhaust in this picture. I don't know if CSX still does. At the time, they would do the little lightning bolts on their AC units. I'm not sure they still do that because there's just so much stuff's AC. Behind, so there's here we can see the difference between the two radiators. First, there's your single exhaust, and this is number 7861, which is SD C40-8. I think we'll see what kind it was. And then you can see the bigger radiator for 637 versus the small radiator for the 4,000 horsepower unit. 7861. 7861. Some of these, so it's a C40-8W, of course, I knew that. I think some are still on the roster because there was some C40-8 that was also like a prototype -9. And these things still think they have them on the roster. Yeah, I think they still have a few. No, those C40-9Ws, whatever numbers they are. 9,000 to 9,050 or something. Those are like the prototype C. Those are like the earliest C40 the -9s. They still had some -8 stuff with them. Someone pointed that out to me. I'm sure I've said that. So there's 7861. I'm trying to see if it's been retired or sold. 66 has been sold. It looks like it might still be on the roster, which would be pretty cool. The -8s are the things that are going quick. I think GE is actually doing a rebuild program with those, just because of how no one wants to deal with the Tier 4 stuff. So I think that GE has this plan to do some rebuilds. I don't need all that container there. Let's see how much I can get rid of. Like I said, I'm standing on the wall that collapsed in 2014 during the rainstorm. 7861. Yep, and I'm not sure how I got a picture of this. Oh, if a train passed, it'd show stop before it was. This dwarf was approach lit. That's one of the reasons why it was difficult for me to get all sorts of indications on it, because as approach lit, it would flip off and you wouldn't be able to see progressions on it. There we go. Um, 2651. Let's see what this guy is. Yep, GP38. There were a bunch of, you'd see an occasional bunch of local transfer moves, like this guy here, between the various yards, because they had yards both on the north and the south side of the harbor, or east and west side of the harbor. So often sometimes you would see whatever their management philosophy du jour was of moving of where you send stuff and then where do you move it. Because you had Bayview New Yard in the north, and Locust Point on the south. A lot of nice photos. I mean, not the greatest camera, but, pretty good job. I'm happy with these. Who's behind him? 25 something. There you go, 25-23. Just gotta get that straightened and cropped. I don't usually try to color when things get into golden hour. It actually looks okay, so I don't usually feel the need to color correct. And that's another reason I don't tend to do these streams with my newer stuff, because there's a lot of color correction I got to do. When I moved from a Canon digital camera to an Olympus, the color correction issues became a major issue. So the one behind it is 25-23, which I assume is another. Yeah, look pretty good. Oops, wrong thing. Trying to think what I want to do with this. I'm just going to lighten up the shadows a little bit and go from there. 25-23 is the one behind. I'm sure these have been put in the dark future scheme, but again, early 2000s, you still had a lot of the other CSX paint schemes running around. There's a lot, and I don't like CSX, so I'm just not one of those CSX aficionados that are going to memorize all the paint schemes. There's a website that'll tell you what they are. I don't know how I'm going to fix this one up, because that's the problem with these pictures. When you don't do them right, then they get all out of whack, and this is probably the best I can do. So 25-23 here, and then there's more units behind. Looks like number 7800. So that's it's got to be the class unit for those C40-8s, which would be cool if I got that. No, it is not the class unit. It had a lot of C40-8s, Ws. All right, there you go. 23. 25-23 rear plus 7800. There we go. And we got the 2651 taking that signal at Huntington Ave. I like this. I like the gray. I like that one where it's like all gray and with the blue lettering, the ghost scheme. And again, Not sure why we have two GP38s leading two road units, but sometimes you catch weird stuff. Everybody needs some paint. Everybody needs some paint. Here we have, yeah, there's 7800, but behind 7800 is 7912. Looks like it's still in service. These are pretty late C40-8Ws. The next thing they would have bought were those prototype -9s. And here we have a very interesting. This looks like a road slug. No, let's find out what this is. 2507. Looks like a road slug. And it's in that. It's in one of those early schemes. Let's see what this 2507. Okay, so I know it's a GP38-2. But let's see what they've done with it. Well, there it is in 2008. Looks like it got a -3 conversion. Oh, yeah, it's a remote control unit now. Kept the same lump. That still has that same wonky front letterboard or rear letterboard. Oh, it's a cow-calf remote control unit now. But yeah, here it is in this the paint scheme that I caught it as. Not a lot of radiators for a train operating in the south. Okay, last one, and just a quick end of train here with some high cubes. Is that a Conrail? Nah, BNSF 760 629. I'm sort of losing light here that day. Must have been really bored. No idea when I took. I've said I don't. 1 second. 760 629. 629. So, almost done. Yeah, so all these pictures were probably taken over weeks. Not these moth ones I'm going to end up with. In fact, I remember when that moth came out, it was quite cold. So if we go back to my master list of things I've taken photos of, which should be somewhere. No, not that one. Here it is. And go back to 2003, and I've filled in most of these, even if I don't have them fully uploaded yet, just so I'd have it there. So these pictures would have been. Make sure. There we go. These pictures would have been, I officially have them dated as September 10th, 2003. And the next alternate set I have are these photos of the Clifton Park signal, or I went out to an interlocking in October, and I was doing more stuff in October. So this was probably taken in the month of pretty much probably between Labor Day and October, which would have been a fall break. Oh wow, here's another one. Probably two. Uh, 5014. It's just non-stop AC 6000s, and I just figure, because hey, just another GE B40-8W, because that's what they all are. I think that the one behind it looks like another, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Oh, I should check questions. Yeah, that New Carrollton Gauntlet was removed in about 15 years ago, sometime around 2005. That Gauntlet track was pulled. I remember it. I have a picture of it when it was all rusty back in 2004-ish. 7321, probably another B40. Let's see. Hold on. This was a Conrail C40-8W, part of the split. So it would have been that would have been a fairly recent paint scheme. That probably I know I could look at one of the other CSX ones, but those red marker lights are probably something to do with that. I'm not sure if the other ones would have had that. Yeah, the CSX ones don't have the little red marker lights. Conrail liked putting the red lights on the back of its engines, and I don't know if they'd still be there. It's a good question if they'd still be there or not. It's a shame that they got removed. That NS pulled them all off the front of the standard Jeeps and SDs, standard cab EMDs. They looked really fetching. I want to leave that fence. This is sort of better with the I mean, it's like sometimes if your locomotive doesn't have a good angle on it, if your borders this here the retaining wall that then collapsed and these leaves. That's a nicer thing here, so no need to crop that out because I already have a picture of 5014. I don't need so it's less important for me to capture the detail on my limited resolution. And again, 7321. And notice again the marker lights on the front there as a Conrail holdover. Yeah, CSX, unlike Norfolk Southern, was an early AC adopter. They bought those prototype C40-9s And then immediately after that, they went with AC 4400. They both had giant, like 500 order of AC 4400s, and that's still pretty much the big core of their system. Up until when they started getting some of the evolutions, but you still that's another issue. If I go to that CSX roster, sorry to whatever there, those AC 4400s from 1 to 495. No, these were built before, but there was a certain point where like everything that I saw was those, or everything in that 1 to looks like 600 pretty much, which is still being bought new in 2002. Those just started showing up en masse, especially when the ES44s from 700 to 1000. This whole blob of AC GE power that started in around, that the first batch and then the second just turned me off to anything that was going by. It's just, AC 4400, AC 4400, AC 4400. CSX had operating plans, like they would run certain things in certain locations, because I would notice it when I would, be on the, taking pictures from the Capitol Limited, and I go, I'm doing my write-up of the trip, and everything's in AC 4400. And they have other equipment, but I think that at some point it had to have changed near me, and it was just sort of like, what's going on? See, damn it. I'm doing low light here, and I can't read the number. This is where I'm doing some of that stuff. So this, oh gosh, I have no idea what that number is. Looks like a 7800 series something. Oh gosh, that's just a blur. I can't even see the radiators to see if that's... I think that's an 8000 series SD40. Because that number on the front looks a little bit like an 8513. No, that last number is a 5. So I think it's an 8 something 15. 8515. What's in their 3000 series anyway? Not much. Could be an SD40 2-3, but no, it's 4000. Yeah, I think that's just an 8000 series SD40. See, it could be an SD50, and it looks... that's what I was wondering about that. It could be an SD50 there, especially they often had them leading, and those would have larger radiators. So I think that is an 8500 series SD50. Let's just see what that one looked like by using a Google search. 8515. That's the right paint. All right, let's call it 8515. As you can tell, so it's raining in this picture, and I'm using a longer exposure, and the train is moving, and everything else isn't. So there you go. And here we have him taking a clear signal on the. I think that's the first clear signal I've got so far here in this set of photos. I'm just gonna stick with this wider view. I'm gonna because the train is so messed up and I already have a picture of it. I'm gonna go with the westbound dwarf clear plus 8515. And the following you. Oh, hey, look at that Chessie boxcar. One behind it is. It looks like 8647. That's definitely an SD50. Yep, that would have been in the range. Let's see what Google says about that. Eight, 6, 4, 7. Yeah, ex Conrail, that's the one. Uh-oh. Yeah. Sorry for all the flopping around here. I just got to try to get through this last bit so we're not here all night. So we have 8647 and a Chessie boxcar. For anyone who doesn't know, boxcars tend to have an FRA life of 40 years. After that, they're got to be retired or used in MOW service. You can get extensions. But that's why suddenly you're going to start seeing a lot less. Any moment now, you're going to start seeing a lot less. Probably the next decade, a lot less classic paint schemes are gonna be around. Because Southern and Chessie both did their last paint in the early 80s. Some point around 85, 86 is where they started adopting the corporate colors of both NS and CSX. So if you do see classic box cars, Chessie cars are very hard to spot. They're pretty much all in MOW service now. Southern is going to become increasingly rare. And we do have a bit of time for Conrail. I think that might be all for the train stuff. I'm gonna go see if anybody has questions. Most of these remaining photos are of me with a weird pink moth on my arm. Anybody around here? Anybody? The best news is that I've recently had to identify one of these, and you can find out what they're called just by Googling. No, it's not that one. Dang it. Some sort of hawk moth. Nah, it's not that. Shoot, I saw this. No, it's not that. Some sort of... Hold on. There it is. Is this the right one? Let's see. Yep, that's it. It's a pink spotted hawk moth. These are really cool. They fly around the Northeast, and you'll sometimes see them cling to a wall. This might be something different. Yeah, that's almost certainly what it is, which is odd because it says that the native ranges only goes up to the southern United States, but I've seen a bunch of these around. Sorry for getting into like weirdo moth identification. But these are the last 4 photos, and I did process these before, so. It's important to have a well-rounded education, both CSX, GE locomotives, and moths. So if you have any questions, let me know while I finish this all up. We have like 2 or 3 more pictures. I remember I saw this clinging to a wall. I brought it back for photos. It's a cold night. That's all I remember. So this is probably this is probably the last these last pictures I know was probably getting into October, and might have been even after I took those pictures at Clifford Interlocking. Cutie. That's one of those things. Make sure that I know that sometimes caterpillars can be garden pests, but it's always good to try to check up on what that caterpillar might become. Some of them are important moth species, so it might be best to relocate it instead of whatever moth you might find, instead of dunking it and killing it. And just a couple left. My next stream is going to be in 2 weeks. Probably going to be another Monday, Tuesday thing. Monday to Tuesday. And this would be the July 27th to 28th. Possibly 26th to 27th as well. But I might be on a plane. Wish me luck. Heading out to the Denver area just to see some friends. So I will be back in an ability to stream that following week. Alright, and I'm almost done, so I'm going to check your questions, and that's my next stream time. Everybody stay safe, avoid bars. If you don't want COVID resurgence, we need to, you need to play it safe, and that means not avoiding crowded bars, avoiding crowded anything. Oh, there's your next stream. Okay. Anyway, thanks you for all watching. Wow, we got 10 people in. Sorry it had to end on kind of a weird note, but I just used that to do the outro. Next time, I have a couple in the pipeline. Not entirely sure what I'm going to be looking at, but I think I'm probably gonna need to do a one. It's probably gonna need to be a 1-dayer. But if it's a 2-day one versus 1 day, that makes a difference. There's a couple of the thing I really want to do is that St. Louis trip, but that's like a 6 that's going to be like something I got to save for Christmas. That St. Louis trip, because it's got a whole ton of stuff in there. 300 files. That's a whole week of me having to do things. So that's probably going to have to be Thanksgiving or Christmas of just that. Cuz I don't like leaving people hanging. Like it's like, if I'm every 2 weeks and it's 5 parts, that's like 10 weeks there. So that's not cool. People need closure. All right, everybody stay safe. I'm going to roll out. Thank you very much for watching, all of you. Did this in a pretty good amount of time, and I will I'll let you know. So again, next date's probably going to be 27th to 28th of July.